Right, I think we'll get started. Amazing. Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, wherever you are, this evening where I am, for this Friends of the British Overseas Territories webinar. My name is Reem Ibrahim, and I am the events coordinator here at FOTBot. And I am so delighted to be joined by Tara Nielson from Acts of Random Kindness, based in the Cayman Islands. Tara, how are you?
Hi. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And hello to everyone out there and across all the territories. It's a pleasure to be here.
Amazing. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I know you're crazy busy, but I'm so excited to learn a little bit more about what it is that you guys do at Acts of Random Kindness and why you were founded in the first place. So, Tara, could you tell me the history of ARC and why it decided to come into existence?
So we're better known as ARC, which translates to Acts of Random Kindness. And I founded the charity in 2006 as really a passion project. I had always really wanted to be a missionary. I have a very deep faith, and I believe in putting love in action every day. And I found myself not a missionary, but in the Cayman Islands with two small children. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to do anything like that until they're adults, where I can go away and work in orphanages or wherever the Lord would call me. Um, and then I felt him say, you can do it right where you are. Charity begins at home. So I decided to start ARC, and I reached out to a small group of friends and invited them over to my house and suggested that we meet once a month and talk about something very impactful together. And instead of going to a restaurant, spending money and doing that kind of thing, I bought a straw hat, and the money would go into the hat. And instead of sort of going into a big charity where you weren't really sure where your funds went, we would make it very personal. So we would pick stories like an orphanage where somebody had been, or you name it. My first one was a family whose number of their children suffered from Friedrich's ataxia, and would slowly decline into wheelchairs, and they really needed support and that kind of thing. And on our first meeting, we had 3,000 Cayman dollars in the hat, because it was very moving. People were very moved. And it's just really important to try and get people out of their own heads and that whole me, myself, and I lifestyle, which isn't a judgment. It's just life is so fast paced. And I just felt if we didn't make it a discipline, if I didn't make it a discipline, my kids would be 26 and I'd be just beginning to do it. So it was about rallying a little community around, motivating one another. We very quickly became 100% locally based as I started to really meet the angels who work in the streets of Cayman, who introduced me to a lot of the issues that were, really rampant in the back streets of Cayman. So the group just grew very, very quickly, from 8 to 20 to 30, and it grew and grew. And these meetings became pretty unmanageable. So we turned it into sort of a one group and once a month. And then when I saw how serious the issues were and how many people were in need, we really started to have to fundraise on a bigger level to try and raise the funds needed to have an impact.
That is absolutely amazing. What a beautiful story that came from such a small decision that you and your friends had made. That's really, really wonderful. Could you tell me a bit about what the personal philosophy for you looked like? So, in terms of the way in which you decided to, actually operationalize this idea and this feeling that you had, but it came from your faith and it came from your experiences around you. Could you talk a little bit about what that personal philosophy looked like?
Well, there was a time in my life where I was newly married with two small children just before moved here, and I was living in Ohio. And we were pretty much living, we didn't really have many means. And it was just one of those amazing American small towns where we moved into this little tiny village and we were struggling. And there was this one particular lady through my church who would just show up at my door with like a Sam's Club, which is like, I don't know what the equivalent is around the world, but a wholesale food shop, a $300 wholesale food shop card, petrol cards, and just show up and just be so kind to me. And I was a complete stranger. And there were others in the community that did that in a time that I was really struggling and feeling isolated in a different country. And it just meant so much to me to have support from strangers, people who didn't know me, who weren't judging me, just saw that I was in need. And that really stuck with me. So I felt that when through my faith, I mean, Christ's greatest lesson is to love one another. So I just felt like that's really the best thing I could do. And he doesn't judge me. I didn't want to take judgment into my work. And but I also wanted it to be very personal. Acts of random kindness gives a great breadth of the sorts of things that we could do. It's not just cancer, it's not just diabetes, it's this umbrella. So we were able to develop the different programs as we saw the need. So making it personal meant taking it, baby steps, one person at a time, see that they're in need, go to their home, just be a friend. People are so lonely and isolated, so many broken families. Just the response of, being there listening. It wasn't about striding in and sharing my faith and, rattling on about what I believe. That wasn't something I talked about. It was just about being with them, being a friend, seeing what the need was. They couldn't feed their children, there was a hole in the roof, they didn't have power, they had power, they didn't have a fridge, they didn't have bedding. And then just learning over time what that need was. So the foundation of ARC is really friendship, and that's the cornerstone. It's relationship and building trust so that people are able to really open up and say, this is what I need. Because if someone's asking for food, then that pretty much everything else has fallen apart in their lives. So the first step is friendship. And that really spoke to our members because, I would get permission, I don't have anything right now, but I have a group of people that I know if they knew what your suffering was and that your children were suffering, they would want to help. So can I share your story? So then I could go back to the group and say, there's this lady, Janice, she has a baby and a 3-year-old and no power and this, that, and the other. Would you like to help? And of course, this was a group of people who, not everyone had a lot of means, but they did have some means and the heart, the desire to have an immediate impact. So then we were able to sort of rally some funds and sort Janice out, get her on her way, and then, move on through the neighborhoods.
That is absolutely wonderful. What a beautiful story, beautiful examples of that. How do you define kindness? What does kindness mean to you guys and well to you personally, but also to ARC as well?
Kindness to me is starts with friendship. I mean, it can start simply by a smile. But kindness is taking notice of people around you, and not just your own needs and your own children's needs and families' needs. It's, noticing who's on your street. It's being aware and seeking out organizations and groups in your community, obviously all over the world, but ours was focused here, and genuinely having the heart's desire and the interest in other people and their journey in life and how you may be able to make that better. And I feel that's a moral responsibility. And I feel like we need to encourage each other because human nature generally is quite selfish. And we need to really encourage each other and remind each other that, we have our own problems and battles and struggles, but everyone has a story. And there are so many people, less fortunate, more fortunate, but seriously less fortunate, where you can really have an impact with simple as listening, a fridge, bedding, and it moves on through our programs, which are much more significant. But we still impart acts of random kindness in small ways, which have a really big impact
That is
emotionally.
that is so beautiful. I think that emotional impact is so important when it comes to even just thinking about kindness itself. So you founded ARC in 2006,
Yes.
and it's gone such a long way since then. Could you talk a bit about what that journey has looked like and how it's developed, any challenges that you might have come across, and what the process actually looks like, founding and developing and growing an incredibly successful charity in a British overseas territory?
Well, thank you for that. It's been a journey, I can tell you that, because of course I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Um, and I can definitely give credit to the most amazing volunteers, some of them, consistent and have been with us on this road, but to people who've come and gone and taught us so much and taught me so much. I was hopeless at so many things. And I've learned so much, made so many mistakes, and had volunteers teaching me things that I needed to learn, and really learning to, you know, work with volunteers and pick out and work as a team, and that's your skill and this is my skill, and I'm better at this and I can't do that, and realizing that you can't do this alone, not just from the running of things, but you know also then you have the funding side of things and those who are always willing to step up and help you find ways. And that is really challenging here because yes, there is a lot of wealth, there's a lot of extreme here, um, but because you're dealing with very delicate stories from abused women and people living in shanties and really personal stuff, you can't put all of that on your Facebook and your Instagram. It's so delicate. So, and there's a huge part of the country that live sort of in a bubble of extreme good fortune, and there's a place for that. That's wonderful, and they've worked hard. They live in a part of Cayman where they're not exposed to the real difficulties and areas of poverty and strife. So to be able to convey that to your donors, whilst being honourable and respectful. I mean, if you're raising money, hospice, cancer, the various different, things that they're animal charities. Everyone wants to rescue a dog and a cat. We all love them. And we all know people have had cancer. That's something you constantly want to support. Our families and ourselves one day end up in hospice. These are all natural things. The Red Cross, people know. But to, be able to get up there and really explain how invaluable our programs are and just how in desperate need so many people are is very challenging. And we've managed over the years to break some glass ceilings on that. But new people are coming all the time, and you need to keep reminding people in the right way, that we really need their help.
It's really wonderful. I want to hear a bit more about your programs in a moment, but could you talk a little bit about that specific challenge? How did you overcome that? I mean, there's this idea that actually there is this kind of, I suppose, misled perspective of the Cayman Islands, this kind of stereotype that the Cayman Islands and a lot of British overseas territories are these tax havens. They are these hubs of wealth. And so they don't face challenges like poverty, like many of the issues that ARC intends to solve and intends to try and help. And there is this kind of perspective. We had a webinar, I think it was about a year ago, where we discussed this a little bit more. Where actually one of the most sort of misled sort of perspectives about the Cayman Islands specifically is this idea that it is so wealthy that poverty doesn't exist. So how do you then overcome that, and how did you communicate that to your donors and to your supporters without then taking away that sort of level of dignity from those particular people that were suffering?
Well, it's been a journey, and what I decided to do was take it one story at a time, and use those stories in rather than putting it on Facebook and things, um, going directly to. So those who live in this wonderful bubble are also those that we need.
Yes.
So they work. They're a great treasure, because we wouldn't be going after that, after all this time. But oftentimes they don't know who to give to. They don't know what's going on. So I go in and present, or I write letters, and I get permission from the candidate, the client, and say, look, I don't have it, but this needs a lot of money. So that's sort of the way that I've been operating for many years, and building relationships with philanthropists and people with really good hearts. And there's lots of companies and people who need to do and want to do good things, impactful things in the country where they live. It really helps them ultimately attain PR and residency and things. So there's other reasons to motivate them. And I really congratulate a lot of the really big firms for standing behind these types of things, and in an intimate setting in a boardroom, or through reports, I'm able to convey more personally what's going on. And then, our home renovation projects, which in America it's similar to the Habitat for Humanity. There are times where I just have to get permission. I got to put this on Facebook, because this has to be solved tomorrow. And
Mm.
by the time, I can't have you living like this while I do a fundraiser, blah, blah, blah. And then the person, and also I do encourage that to, because it's no good just brushing it under the carpet. If we keep doing it surreptitiously, we have to show that there is a housing crisis. And this is not a judgment on the government. In every society has this, and every community should rally to, support one another, in their square mile. And it's just wonderful if you have a charity that you trust that is doing that, because not everybody has the time. Some people don't have time, but they have the means in different seasons of their life. People say, I'm sorry, I can't volunteer. And I just say, it's not that season in your life.
Yeah.
That will come. But right now, you can support us in a different way. So I'm not sure if that caught all your questions, because I've now forgotten them all, but
No, no, that's wonderful. No, because it's so interesting, because that is sort of something that I don't necessarily really think about, that a lot of the time there is this really difficult line between, especially with traditional charities, where you are working with people's lives. And there is such a difficult line between, we want to showcase the work that we're doing, and the more support we get, the more financial support that we get, the more people we're able to help. But then at the same time, how do you sort of balance that with those particular people as well? And I think you answered that perfectly. Could you talk a bit about what the problems facing Cayman Islanders actually are? Because I think that this is one thing that, it's anathema for so many people. This perspective that actually the Cayman Islands isn't just this bubble of wealth and wealth creation, and that there are these everyday issues, especially for those that actually are residents on the island. So could you talk a bit about that? Because, we want to be challenging those stereotypes, but there's no competing narrative. So what
yeah.
is that narrative?
Well, firstly, I would just say, a lot of the people that move here just don't, it's not their fault really, because they don't go into the neighborhoods. That you just wouldn't stray off into parts of the island if you were an expat, and you're in, a certain part of the island, it's just not something you're going to do. So, it's not necessarily their fault, and it isn't something that's broadly spoken of because it's not very great for tourism and those sorts of things. It's not something that's written about a lot. Um, so we have hurricanes here. In 2004, we had a Hurricane 5. I lost my own house. So you can just imagine a lot of the houses that were made out of wood and more
Oh my
shanty
God.
types, or the planning and codes are completely different post that.
So
But
you
there
lost your
was,
own house during the hurricane.
yes, it filled with
Oh,
water and with the ocean, the raging sea, and lost the cars and all sorts of things. But thankfully, I have a family support. Eventually got off the island. I had my mum and dad to wrap around us and carry us through, but it took us a long time to find our feet again. So you can imagine, if you have $7 a day or a week and your house is patched up with plywood or as wattle and daub, it's a long road. And it was a terribly difficult thing for the government to mount the kind of support. If anyone's interested, they can go online and look at photos of the devastation. And a lot of families were given some money to, help with the repairs. But everything is very expensive here because it's imported. And just hundreds of people were just not in a position to really fix their homes because once you have the floodwater in, and it gets into the walls, it starts to grow black mold. So
yes,
people
and then
were
it
able to
becomes
sort of,
dangerous, isn't it?
yeah, very dangerous. And people were able to sort of patch their roofs and patch a few things here and there over time, but not remove their walls or fix their plumbing. Electricals became dangerous. Everything was sodden, you know.
My God.
So as I started to go into the streets and meet people and go into their homes, the breathing, I don't suffer from asthma, but I would go into these homes and the clients would be coughing and they'd have health conditions. And I started to realize, oh my goodness, this is a serious problem. So, children were often going into the hospital in the week into emergency from coughing and lung problems and, all sorts of things. So that's where I really was like, okay, this is a problem. So we started sort of taking house by house and fixing the walls and gutting places and putting on new roofs and raising awareness and raising funding to try and patch these, well, not patch, but, it depended on our funding. And then we started to find houses that, it was going to take $30,000 to fix.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah, so it's been, you know, there's still so much work to be done, and we are doing it one house at a time. Well, quite a few at a time, actually, as far as the home improvements. And we do get support, but we need a lot more support. And there is now a government program called a housing repairs program, which I'm absolutely thrilled about because they're working as well on this. But like I said, government can't do everything. You need charities and community groups to sort of get stuck in and help as well. So that's the housing program. And I think one of the other big problems is education here. So this is when we launched when I would do my home visits and meet the families and things, I started to see the children, were very delayed, didn't really have social age appropriate social skills because the families were so isolated, because the mother was under such duress, had experienced trauma, and everyone knows what it's like to feel financial pressure, not being able to take care of your children properly, the whole environment, not having a family like I did to wrap around me when we experienced difficulty. And that's what ARC tries to be, is sort of wrap our service around so they have a support, and ultimately set them up, not to take care of them forever because we can't do that, but to set them up to a much better place. and that every day would be hugely improved. So on seeing that the children were needing educational, social, emotional support, B, realizing, over a summer, you just don't want them hanging around in the neighborhood, just digressing and not doing better and not around, learning new skills and around great people. We started to fundraise for summer camps. And that was really great. And we put all these kids in different summer camps. And then some of them I would put in these educational camps because I realized there were problems. And after that first couple of days when I went in, the lady who ran this amazing place said, Tara, we've got 15-year-olds who are pre-K 3 level reading. You know,
Oh
they're
my God.
teenagers, they're just
And
way off.
why has the literacy rate managed to get so bad, or has it always been this much of a problem?
Well, I think what I've learned is that there are a lot of children, and this is worldwide, that have these learning difficulties and learning challenges. ADD, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, um, um, autism spectrum, kids who haven't had the enough medical care. It can be as simple as hearing. You didn't realize they couldn't hear correctly. You didn't realize they really needed
Really?
glasses, and government doing the best that they could. But, you know, you really need a big team to be, and parents who notice these things and understand these
Be
things,
aware of
and
it in the first place,
yeah,
hasn't
be aware of it in the first place. So so I think that what we see in our program is pretty much every one of our children, even if they've had significant trauma and they've missed the foundations of learning, then they're just getting further and further behind while the other children are sort of taking off. And if you're in the low sort of 50, 75%, bottom of the class because of various reasons, you just are not you're just not going to get ahead. You're just going to get locked out of the reading code and locked out of your curriculum and your world. It's like being blinded, and these children are being left behind, not because the schools aren't making tremendous efforts and gains, but because we need to step in and help rally the troops so we can help these children who are growing up in sort of historically families that have just struggled for years and years. Let them be the generation that break out of this and break free.
That is amazing, Tara. That is so wonderful. Could you tell me an example of somebody or a family that you've helped on the island since founding ARC in 2006 and what that looked like? And then a little bit about your programs and what it is that you guys actually do day to day.
We've got lots of wonderful success stories. One of our, like I said, we're trying to put the ducklings back in the pond. We're trying to help people, stand on their own feet. One family was living in a trailer in the East End. The mom was having a really trying time. She had 5 children. She had got hold of this old sort of trailer that was an old office, those container type offices that people use on construction sites. She was living there with her 5 children. There wasn't enough space for all of the children, so this young boy was sleeping on the floor. There was a lot of rats and termites and mosquitoes, and it was just the last place you would want to see 5 children living. And he slept on the floor, and he had all these bites across his toes
Oh, no.
from the rats, and scabs everywhere from mosquitoes and things. And bless his mum was working at a local petrol station part-time, a few hours here and there, and she couldn't leave them unattended, so she would lock them in the container. And I can tell you how hot it gets here. Anyway, luckily somebody told us about the family and we were able to create great change and get her out of the container and into a concrete home. And Ian, one of the things we do is match kids up with people with who are interested in sort of doing a mentoring. We call it friendering, and we matched this little boy up with this fantastic guy, and they became great friends. And in that relationship, you start to discover, who is this person? Do they have dreams? What are they good at? And he turned out to be the most amazing artist, so they got him all kinds of resources. He always wanted to be a dive instructor. They paid for him to do the dive course. And then he now has a really great job with a tourism company here and takes care of his family. And
Oh
it was
my
just one of
God.
those great. And what we say at ARC is the ripple of kindness is unending, right? Because he does wonderful things, and we've seen that throughout the history of ARC. When you have that, just like I did from my experience, when you have somebody impact you like that, and just love on a stranger and sort of embrace them and invite them into your life, they carry on and do that. So he was one of a really special story, but there are lots of children that we've really had a massive impact in. Elderly people, we've renovated their homes, children who've just lived in practically squalor. We've gone in and we've just gutted their home and made it beautiful. And it's corporates, it's banks, it's finance companies. You show them the photos and they're like, oh, we'd love to get on board. And they come and they help out, they donate funds, and it's like, oh, I have a bed, or I have a fridge, or I have bedding, and they fall in love with the kids. And next thing you know, the kids have a dream bedroom. And then you've got huge construction development companies here that throw in plumbing and bathtubs and roofing and you name it. So it's about connecting people in strife with all these different resources, and that's a wonderful thing to get all of those big people, big companies who really can have impact. And really, it's really not a big ask of these big companies. So they're delighted to get on board. So, and through our MARE program, which stands for Mentor, Educate, Reinforce, we're having a generational impact on these children and families. So we have a building in West Bay that we renovated through a wonderful donation. That is the center of the MARE program, which is literally a stone's throw from a primary school in West Bay. So we have identified, in partnership with the school, the children who are most vulnerable and have the lowest literacy rates. So those are the children that we enroll in our program. And the first thing we do is go and do a home visit and meet mom and meet the kids. And if they meet the criteria, then they get an assessment with us. And just to make it brief, they then start coming over to our hub, and 5 days a week, they're getting literacy intervention, one-on-one or one-on-three.
Wow.
And the data is proving how life-changing it is. And that is enabling us to maintain support because donors are saying this is having an impact. And then we wrap our services around the family immediately on a home visit. The roof is leaking, there's pots everywhere, there's no power or water, or they just need that added support, the food support. So all our MARE kids are part of our family, and that ensures we know that they're managing their utility bills, the children have enough food, they all have a good kitchen, bathroom, clean bedding. We know when there are health issues, we can get them glasses, hearing aids, psych educational reports. So they're getting the literacy. We have after school camp, summer camp, and we just love on them and get to know them so we can plug them into other resources on the island, like, if they're into ballet or football or rugby, we can reach out and say, hey, would you let Jeremiah join your club? So it's a really great way to help these children really break the boundaries and the limitations and battles that they're facing.
Tara, that is such a beautiful story and so wonderful to hear I think when you hear those personal stories, it just has the most profound impact on you, and it means that anybody listening to it wants to do as much as they can to help and get involved. It's beautiful. Before we go on to pass over to the audience so that we can hear a bit about what their questions are, I've got one last question for you. Where do you see the future of ARC going, and what do you think the future of the Cayman Islands holds, and with those particular issues that they're facing and that islanders are facing specifically? But where do you see ARC's role in that?
Definitely working towards helping alleviate the housing crisis. It's something we haven't really talked about, but that's one area we're really concentrated in. So those who will always be renting or supported by social services, there's not a lot available, really good standard of living, and we can't keep building, tiny houses everywhere. It's really a lot of work, takes a lot of time. So we're working on designing, a much smaller sort of module type home that we could stamp out, somewhere between $30,000, because there's so many Caymanians who actually have land rich and cash poor, and it would just be amazing to be able to provide a house for them, no matter how humble. So they'll never be on the system. They won't have rent. They'll have a homestead, and so through their employment, that they'll be able to manage. We've got some bigger projects we're looking towards in the area of housing, in the education program. I'm creating that really as a blueprint so that we can move that into all the districts as a complementary program to the government schools. And that relationship is really unique. We have a great relationship with the government, with the schools, and the data shows that they really need the backup. And so we're really hoping to build significantly, dramatically. And we're asking individuals to sponsor. It's $5,000 a year to sponsor one child for one full academic year for the tuition part. So I really want to see every bank, every successful business in Cayman adopt their own Caymanian child and stay
Wow.
invested and in relationship. So that's a campaign we're about to launch, because we need stability. We need to know that, we're not constantly pounding the pavements to crawl into the next academic year. So those are a couple of things, but definitely not going anywhere right now. But we always need fresh horses in the race, and we need to work together as a country and a community, and think ourselves outside ourselves as much as possible as a discipline.
God, Tara, you are such an angel, aren't you? It is absolutely wonderful to hear about everything. And also just the fact that a lot of the work that you're doing is really seems to be targeting long-term change. There are a lot of charities obviously exist for the short term, for you're immediately in need of crisis support. But actually what it appears as though you guys are really thinking about that long term, and actually the impact that an entire academic year of education could have on a particular child is, I mean, it's immeasurable. And so it's so wonderful to hear what you guys are looking to do towards the long term, and also, I mean, the future of all of those wonderful people that you've been able to support. So huge well done to you, and congratulations on all of the people that you've been able to help. We've got quite a few questions in the chat box. I'm going to call on you guys to see if you want to ask the question yourself, or if not, I can read it for you. So, Philip, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, can you
Yep,
hear me?
yeah,
Yeah.
we can hear
Okay,
you. How are you?
amazing. Hello, Tara. Nice to probably meet you. And yeah, I've got a few questions. But I'll just start by asking about the first one. Are there specific challenges in the capital, Georgetown? When I stayed in Cayman in 2018, I was apparently staying in the rough part of town, but from my perspective, it was pleasant enough, though interesting to see that there was quite a rich cultural mix of people. So yeah, really just wanted to ask, if is it like any country, or like, is it the capital where you're finding specific challenges, or is it outside Georgetown? Thanks.
Well, Maybe you're more familiar with the main part of Georgetown where the sea is and where the cruise ship has come in. That's a fine part, a great part, very attractive to tourism. But you're right. Yes, in Georgetown, parts of Georgetown, there's a lot of these issues that I'm talking about. We're very centered there with the housing, and we had our education program started actually in Georgetown. But there is a huge pocket in West Bay of need from all the different things that we've discussed during this time. But I would say it is very much spread out between West Bay, Georgetown, and East End. We don't get to East End as much as we would like. Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you. And if I may, just to follow up on that, so yeah, my engagement came when Eric Bush was leading the Cayman office in London, and I had a number of meetings with Andre, who remains a good friend. So it's great to know you've been. I see he's on your website, which is I think he's smashing, and who knows, could become premier in the near future. But yeah, on the topic though, just of London, do you have you engaged much with the London office, Tara? Have you met Tash
No,
and
we haven't, and we would like to.
Mhm.
I can't remember the lady I met, and she was very interested, and she came over. She's actually from Cayman, and she came over, and I showed her a tiny house, and she wanted to do sort of a home, follow us on a home improvement project. So, to engage people who care about Cayman and who've been here. And we had talked about doing that. We haven't done that yet, but we're really interested in any engagement whatsoever, from sponsoring a child, or even if it's just a donation of our hunger program, Feed Cayman. We're constantly giving these Fosters is like our Tesco. These Fosters cards out every day to families in need. So we're really looking for any interest. We'd be so thrilled.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's helpful to know, because I'm just thinking out loud. That's something perhaps we can engage with through Footbot. Although I'll be honest, my main experience and support came when Eric and Andre were leading the Cayman office in London.
Okay. Yeah.
Although you'll find Charles Patchman is part of the furniture. He's been there for like 25 years, I think. He's the deputy representative. But yeah,
Okay.
I'll take that. I can give you obviously discussion after. I think I'll pass over to Robert Midgley, if that's okay, Reem. I think he's got.
Yes, yeah, Robert's got a question. I don't know if he wants to ask it directly.
Hi, my question I think was almost just answered in that answer. It was more about how can we as individuals and as Thoughtbot help you basically.
Well, you can donate online. I know every charity says that, but we can't do what we do without the funding. So on our website, you can make a donation, but even if it's $10, I'm that serious. So you can, if you really care about housing, for example, you can earmark it CASA, which is our home improvement program. If you really care about the hunger or the education program, you can earmark it for whatever really, aligns with your heart. Or it can, if you don't, it just go into general, which is very, very important as well. So that's how you can help, or you can encourage, if you work in a big company, perhaps have a dress down day for ARC, and raise some funds yourself, or have a quiz night. There's ways to raise, a little bit of money in a fun way with your friends or your colleagues.
I think that's definitely something that we at Football will be having conversations about, Tara. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions at all from the audience? I am not seeing any. We only have a couple of minutes left. So, Tara, I just wanted to say thank you so much. How can we keep up with all of the wonderful work that you guys are doing?
Well, we're on Instagram and Facebook. I'm happy to, drop in sometimes on a call if you want. We will be doing newsletters. We can send that to you, and if you want to share, they're quite random because we have so many volunteers, that we rely on. And I just want to reinforce that, I'm no angel. I just love people and I love helping, and I could not do it without just there's hundreds of volunteers standing beside me and behind me that you can't see right now. And, hundreds of people who funded us from the very beginning. When we would get our first 3,000, I just couldn't believe it. But if I get any money at all, I would just get so thrilled because it represented somebody's heart and their compassion, and their willingness to give, trust us to give to somebody in need.
That is so wonderful, Tara. That is amazing. And we will definitely be sharing some of the information that you gave us in our newsletter and in our social media output as well. So thank you so much for talking to all of us, and to all of you for listening, whether it's currently live or on the recording as well. And huge thank you to Tara for talking to us today. It's so wonderful to hear from you. There are just a couple of things that I wanted to mention to everybody. So we have our gala dinner in London in December, the 5th of December. And it is going to be very fun, as it always is every single year. So please do grab your tickets. I believe you can still get the tickets online on our ticket tailor, or if you just look directly through the Friends of the British Overseas Territories website as well. They're always very good fun, and it means that we get to fundraise for some of the projects that we look at as well. And I don't know if Tracy is on the call or if she wants to give an events update. Is Tracy around? Or Philip, do you want to provide the events update if Tracy's not on the call?
Yes, sorry, I'm just.
Tracy's here. Sorry, hi Tracy.
Sorry.
Yes, my lovely.
So we do have another event in the pipeline, which is coming up in October. Date to be confirmed. So there will be some information coming through on that. So keep an eye out. Just waiting to get that one pinned in the diary. And then, of course, as you've already mentioned, Reem, the gala dinner, which will be amazing as always.
And Philip, do you have anything else to update anybody on?
Yeah, thank you. Well, firstly, a huge thanks to you, Reem, for hosting a superb evening, and a big thanks to Tara. So thank and it's really been really interesting, and I think there's perhaps some support we can look to give to your organisation, Tara, next year. As for this year, I just wanted to highlight the St Helena. Our current fundraising is, of course, to support the purchase of disabled equipment for residents in St Helena, because a lot of them, they've only got the one hospital, and essentially there's a lot of activities and procedures that can be done without having to go into hospital, but they don't have those basic equipment. So Football is currently raising, we're halfway to target. We've raised just under £4,000. We're looking to raise 8,000.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you. And just to give you an idea, if you go on our website and click on campaigns, you'll see that's our current campaign. But you'll see we donated in 2017 to Hurricane Irma disaster relief in the BVI, and we've also given various money to Falkland Islands. Montserrat is another big one that we've supported. So yeah, it's but this year, yeah, it's very much about St Helena, and I am doing a sponsored walk next year.
Wow.
I'm doing it in stages because it is 630 miles.
Oh my gosh!
So yes, it's just around that does sound like, well, it is a lot, but I'm doing it in 8 stages, and it's around Cornwall. So I'm doing the southwest coastal walk.
Wow.
And thank you to those of you. I think 2 of you on this line have already donated. So I'm trying to raise at least £1,000 towards that as well. But otherwise, yeah, it's really Tara, I know it's I don't know if I can click my fingers and you'll be able to appear in London, but do put the 5th of December in your diary. We've got 130 people coming. We booked out an actual it's an old World War II escort vessel on the Thames. So it's going to be a big evening, and we've got a string quartet band. You could always say think Titanic theme, but we don't want the ship to sink, obviously. So yes, we will provide enough life jackets. Don't worry on that score. But yeah, but otherwise, and also it would be remiss of me to not mention the fact that I think we are actively recruiting for my successor as Chief Executive Officer. Applications are open to the 13th of October. I think, I will be standing down at the March AGM after 12 years, but I do welcome, I do encourage anyone interested to please apply. You'd be very welcome. Any applications will be appreciated. And on that note, just again to thank you, Reem, for a superb hosting and for your support, for giving up your very valuable time, Reem. So thank you again, and I'll pass back to you, Reem.
Thank you so much for your kind words. That's very sweet. And yes, I definitely recommend to any of you who are available on the 5th of December, do come. They're always very fun. And even if even when we're doing sort of talking about the ideas and sort of the projects that we've been able to support, it's just great to have everybody in the room to listen and talk about it. So thank you guys so much, and I hope to see you guys, if not at our event in October, at the gala dinner, or indeed on our next webinar. And thank you again so much to Tara. Do check out Acts of Random Kindness as well, and check out some of their amazing work. It's absolutely brilliant. Thank you, everyone.
Listening. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
Tara. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.